and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Friday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, back in the saddle, joined after being summoned a day ago. A quick reaction: the Professor Deniz is here. Professor, how are you?
I mean, I've been watching all the shows, but I do have a sixth sense that when people start talking smack about Dallas Goedert's impact on the run game, I need to answer as quickly as possible. I was hoping for an emergency pod last night, but also for this.
Now, Professor, we have not spoken to you since the day of the parade, and so you told us then you were really trying to soak up the post Super Bowl glow. Of course, you do all that work to prepare for just that situation. You wanted to, let it linger as long as possible. Have you yet made it through the film from the Super Bowl, or are you still taking it slow?
No, I am going so slowly. I'm letting it completely marinate. I'm doing like 3 or 4 plays.
You're film gooning.
It's been awesome. And I mentioned this to you, I think, off the air. It took me this long 2 years ago to get through the Super Bowl 57 for the opposite reason. Like, it was too painful. Like I'd watch a few plays. It was too painful. I'd have to stop, come back a few days later. And this time, I'm just like, wait, I'm going too fast. I don't want it to end. So that's me with the film late at night on my own. And then with Evren, with my son, we've been watching all of the mic'd up, the turning point, the various NFL films things that have been coming out, various highlights. He loves the watching the Devontae Smith touchdown in 15 different languages, including the Turkish one, which is awesome. And so we've been doing all that. I just watched the Eagles mic'd up one just before this, and I was wiping away tears, even though most of it was stuff we'd seen before. It's been awesome. It's just so cool. And we got our big championship banner that says, Super Bowl champions with this year's Super Bowl logo on it right above the stairs. So every time we go downstairs, I'm looking at that, and it's just, I could be having the worst day, and it just makes me feel better. So this is what it's all about. It's great. Love it.
That's what it's all about. I'm glad you're soaking it up. We are 69 hours and about 57 minutes away from the official opening of the tampering period. We're going to be live on Monday for 3 hours at least, from 12 to 3 with Zach Berman and Fran Duffy. We're looking forward to it. Lots to get to. And Zach, let's start with some news today of some released defensive linemen who could actually potentially be of interest for the Eagles.
Yeah, Jonathan Allen from the Washington Commanders, a longtime nemesis of the Eagles, someone that I know they respect quite a bit in that locker room, released after being on the trade market. And so, again, a position that's important to the Eagles. I imagine there's going to be a major market for him there, but he is being released. And then one that you actually notified me on once I came onto this link, Harold Landry from the Tennessee Titans. This was right before the show started. He's going to be released by the Titans, also someone they were looking to trade, and we will discuss him. But the Harold Landry news is especially interesting because now if he's available via free agency as opposed to the trade market, obviously you don't have to give up anything to get him other than money. He does not go into the compensatory pick formula, so that changes the equation on Harold Landry. Harold Landry, 28, turns 29 in June. But two notable moves at the positions that we imagine the Eagles will prioritize if they make additions in free agency.
Harold Landry is an interesting one in particular. Now we are going to finish Quacketology today and crown a champion as the person most likely to be added by the Eagles next week or in the weeks after that. Harold Landry was eliminated in the first round of Quacketology by Michael Mayer. However, that was when we considered him a trade candidate. Now that he is released, I do think that maybe we're going to have to throw him back in, Zach. You mentioned Harold Landry, 6'2", 252, as you said, turns 29 in June. He has the last 4 seasons, in 2021, 12 sacks. Then he missed all of 2022 with a torn ACL, 10.5 sacks in 2023, 9 sacks last season. If you look at just the my metrics that I love, how often do you hit the quarterback when you are rushing the passer? He's hit the quarterback about 4.4% of the time over the last 2 years combined. That's in the top end of the league, not elite, but in the sort of Daniil Hunter, Matthew Judon area. So certainly would add some juice to the Eagles. And as we have talked about, we see Milton Williams and Josh Sweat on the thumbnail for this episode. The Eagles are going to need somebody there. And anybody who is not qualifying for the comp pick formula is automatically a little bit more attractive to them.
Sure. And when someone's already been paid, sometimes their approach in free agency changes, especially as they near 30. They're interested in a contender. I need to see what the contract is to see what type of offsetting language there would be. Also, if you compare it to like the Bryce Huff signing last year, he's more of a there's less projection from scheme, right? He's been a stand-up rusher in the past. He's dropped in the past. He's a different type of player than Bryce Huff. He's been more of, I don't want to say 3-4, but playing odd man fronts as opposed to Bryce Huff, who was just a designated pass rusher with the Jets. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And also, you don't have to look for, if you watch, I didn't watch a lot of Titans games this year. I admit that. But when the Eagles played the Titans in the past, he's given Lane Johnson a tough go at it. And I think Lane would tell you that. So I imagine there's respect in the locker room for Harold Landry.
To follow up on Zach's comment about Harold Landry being someone who could fit the scheme. I mean, last year, 18% of the pass rush snaps or pass down snaps that he played, he was in coverage rather than rushing the passer, including 25% of the ones on first down. So he was definitely asked to drop into coverage a lot. We know that's something that Vic Fangio asks his edges to do as well. And these numbers, I mean, 18% coverage rate on pass downs, that's higher than anyone on the Eagles was asked to do last year. So, I mean, that would not be a concern that he, wouldn't be a fit, or like Bryce Huff, wouldn't, get playing time because Fangio doesn't trust him to do those things. He clearly has experience doing that.
Not quite Anthony Nelson level numbers, but pretty high up there nevertheless. Okay, I do want to forestall Quacketology for a few minutes. First, I want to get some of Deniz's thoughts on the things that have happened this week with the Eagles. But let's start with that mic'd up. Zach, I'm sure you watched it as well. What jumped out to you? What was interesting?
Some more Jarran, and I know this clip has been circulating, but Jarran seems like he wanted to run up the score a little bit.
That was very funny.
Is that fair to say? So I thought that was an interesting.
Was it that, or was he concerned that it wasn't in the bag? I couldn't tell if it was because he was doing the when it hits 0-0, I'll relax thing at the same time.
Sure.
So you think it was just running it up?
Good point. Yeah, I think he wanted to. I think he wanted to put it on the pedal a little bit more. I also, not just from last night, but from even the original mic'd up. The NFL Films one, something that I actually didn't put together. I'm sure you guys did.
I think I have the exact same thought. Go ahead.
The Nick Sirianni with the sacks. Yes. Yeah. It's a direct response to the Chiefs from. Yes. Okay, so it's interesting on the same wavelength.
Absolutely.
I didn't put that together originally.
The zero sacks T-shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lane talked about it.
And Lane talked about it. Yes, exactly. So it was very much a thing. I had the same reaction, Zach. I didn't really put it together the first time, and it became very obvious in this edit that's what it was about.
Yes, exactly. All right, good. Well, now I feel like it's not something that I missed on the first time. It was the combination, like you said, of Lane's speech, which when the NFL Films thing came out, we actually hadn't seen that Eagles the unscripted, right? Because the NFL Films came out before that. So I just thought Sirianni was just counting sacks. Thought that's what he does during the game.
And there was when he says the first one, there's a pointed thing that they didn't show in the NFL Films one, where he really makes it clear that that's one.
Exactly.
He almost pokes BG's eye out, telling him that it's one. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so that it registered to me last night. That's exactly what he was doing in the chat. I see they're saying they thought it was obvious. They knew. I didn't put that together the first time. This is very helpful for me to know now, but I didn't realize that the first time.
Yes, I think you get a better sense of Sirianni's in-game mania in the Eagles version as opposed to the NFL version. You really just how unhinged he is during the game in a really endearing way, I think.
Let me ask you guys this too. And I obviously want to hear both of your thoughts on it, but something that came across my mind is Baun was more of a featured character in this one than in the NFL Films one.
They waited to release this.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Did they wait till they had the Baun contract to release this?
There's no way they would have edited it so that there was less Baun if he wasn't on the team anymore, don't you think?
I think so, but I actually think this goes back further. I think the decision to mic him up in the first place kind of made it clear that they were going to try to re-sign him, right? Because they didn't mic up Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, right? I mean, even in the NFL version, like the choice of the guys they mic up, like it's Saquon as a main star. Zach Berman is like the main guy on defense, Like,
yeah. Are the Eagles the ones who decide that for the Super Bowl, though? Isn't that NFL Films kind of deciding that stuff?
That's a good question.
It's in conjunction with the Eagles, but the Eagles version, obviously, the Eagles entertainment crew is putting that one out, and they did a great job. But it did seem like they leaned into Baun a lot more, and I don't know if it's simply because from the NFL Films perspective, maybe Baun isn't as compelling. But it struck me the timing of it. Like it did seem like an odd time to put it out last night. They've been sitting on this footage. I think the offices were closed for a week before the combine, or I shouldn't say the offices were closed. I think a lot of people were out. Something like this takes a lot of bandwidth to put together. But the Thursday night before free agency struck me as kind of an odd time on it. So I wondered if they were waiting for Baun because Baun was so featured.
One thing that occurred to me watching that is like, there's a lot of Nakobe in there, and you do get a sense of like how fiery of a leader he is. And just it's going to be like a little bit awkward when he comes back, right? By the time he comes back mid-season, it's Zach Berman's defense. He's the one leading the huddle. He's going to have the green dot. Like it's going to be a slightly different dynamic there. I'm sure it will be fine, but it will be a bit of a flip on the way that they played when they were together in 2024.
I can jump in real quick here in that it's a great point because Devontae has such a strong personality. Like, and you heard this when he got drafted, but you saw this. I was watching yesterday. I watched the mic'd up clip from the mic'd up from the Jacksonville game, and Nakobe was mic'd up there, and he does have that alpha personality that comes through quite a bit. I can't see Nakobe taking a back seat. Now, Zach Baun's the featured player, but I wonder if Baun would be even deferential to Dean when Dean comes back.
I don't know. I mean, by the time he comes back, Baun will have already been leading that huddle for most of the season. He will have been the green dot. I don't think he's going to hand it over, right? He's the guy got paid $17 million. The other guy's going to be on the final year of his rookie deal.
Yeah, to me, neither of these guys seems like the kind of personality where this is going to be turned into like a conflict.
I don't absolutely.
But I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
I like the moment.
Nakobe had that like leader role coming in, yes. Right?
Just the vocal of it, like even Baun's pregame speech is like, "I love y'all boys," just very nice. I think maybe that's a callback to our shows, but it's good nonetheless. I like when he with his wife, he's just like, an interception in the Super Bowl. I can't believe it. It's so cool.
I thought that was really cool too, especially because he's not the kind of player who you normally think of as thinking about his own stats and his own like accomplishments, but he doesn't have the career that Jalen's had to be able to be like, I don't care about MVP, I'm a champion. Like he can't believe he's even playing in the Super Bowl, let alone getting interceptions. Like, awesome.
What were your other favorite moments, Professor?
Oh, I mean, I liked how this one had a couple more moments of like they just can't F with us, right? Like that wasn't in the NFL Films one. When Baun goes over to CJ Uzomah, and yes. I mean, I can't believe he didn't ask him about the deal he got at Wanamaker's the week before. But when he's just like, these guys just can't F with us. Like I thought that was awesome. Like how confident everybody was that like it was just such a mismatch. Like,
what I loved about that one was after the Chiefs finally scored a touchdoch. He's like, well, that was a fluke. They got lucky.
Yeah, they got lucky.
They got lucky. It's like 40-6. He's like, they got lucky. Like, which is good.
Yeah.
That was a good sense of how lopsided it was. Zach, anything else from you on that before we move on?
Not at the moment. No.
Okay. Well,
are you guys hearing anything behind the scenes about when they expect Nakobe back? Because we were talking about like addressing that position.
Yeah.
It seems like Horton Burks should be fine if they just bring him back. But I'm just curious, are we talking like week 5 or are we talking more like week 12,
Yeah, this is one of those where I think you need to get closer to the landmark because I spoke to Nakobe about this and Nakobe sounded confident he was going to be back. But I think that's just the nature of Nakobe Dean, right? And
sure.
This is one of those you see where he is come training camp. I heard him on a podcast Forget which one. I apologize, but he was talking about how his kneecap was like up in his thigh area when he was on the field.
That's right.
Yeah,
I saw that,
it's a devastating injury, but he's like he was in Las Vegas, like he's been around. So I don't know. I don't know what the definitive timeline is. I think the Eagles need to operate as if he's not going to be there for the start of the season, and they need to have a reliable number 2 linebacker who can become the number 3 when Nakobe's back.
Well, I want to talk to you about this, Deniz, because let's start with Baun, because you and I just texting off the show. I know you are a big Baun fan, and even sort of bristled at the notion that like there would be a choice between Baun and Milton Williams as to who was more valuable for the defense last season. But when you watch Baun, we talked to Fran about this as well, but what was so difference making from him in terms of changing the structure of this defense as opposed to every other Eagles linebacker you've seen besides Christian Ellis?
Yeah, who knows what Christian Ellis would have done with Fangio, right? We'll never know. But I think one of the things that I thought about with Baun was early in the year we were saying we didn't really know who he was, right? We were just kind of surprised that he was playing. And one of our first impressions of him, he played very well in the game in Brazil, but one of our first impressions of him was him getting cut constantly on those outside zone runs by the Falcons, right? Like the right guard just kept climbing to him, cutting him. And it was like, ooh, like, I don't know if this is going to work, like if we have this undersized guy who can't get off those blocks. And then it's just crazy. I was just thinking like that never happened again. You know what I mean? Like nothing close to that ever happened again. I mean, it happened like 10 times in that game, and then it basically never happened again. And Fangio said like, he'll learn from that. He hasn't ever seen that really. And it was such a good reminder that like he hadn't played this position before. Like it made a lot of sense that he hadn't seen that he didn't know how to deal with that, and that he was able to learn it so quickly. But look, Fran's talked about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot, like the versatility of him being able to line up on the edge and, have everybody else stuck inside, allowing you to play a 5-man front without bringing on Jordan Davis, basically, right? Like without bringing on that extra defensive tackle and taking off one of your best defensive players in Cooper DeJean, which is what was happening before Cooper DeJean was playing. Now, Fran pointed out correctly the other day that that's only a handful of plays a game, but I think that those plays, even though it's a small number of plays, with the same continuity of the players playing, makes everything else so easy. I'm blanking on who it was who was saying this. I think it might have been Slay who was saying it earlier in the year, and I apologize if I misremember who it was, but they were talking about the value of the continuity of the personnel on the field in terms of the rules and the coverages, right? And we know that this defense, I know the pass rush was huge in the Super Bowl, but all year, this defense was good because of the coverage, right? The ability to match routes, the ability to follow rules in zone coverages. And those rules change when you switch from nickel to base, right? Those rules change completely when you take the nickel off the field and you're asking somebody else to do that job. And Baun's versatility, along with Cooper DeJean's versatility, allowed for that to happen. And then, sorry, I'm just like rambling here because I loved watching Zach Berman all year, but in the Super Bowl, when he got that interception after the game in the presser, he said, I felt the route behind me. And I'm so glad he said that on that stage, because all year watching the film, like it seemed like he had eyes in the back of his head. I mean, just his ability to feel the routes behind him and understand where he had to be to undercut those routes was uncanny. And I'm comparing it to last year's linebackers who couldn't see the routes in front of them. It's like they didn't seem to have eyes anywhere. For him to be able to see the routes in front of him and behind him at the same time was just crazy. And of course, that lets you, that lets you not have to blitz because you trust the coverage can hold up for longer. And we saw how that, really bore fruit in the That's not right. In the Super Bowl.
Yeah. 2 quick things to add to that. First being, you are right regarding him getting the cut blocks against Atlanta, and a big thing. I was going through with the New Orleans game earlier this week, and Nick Sirianni he was like really impassioned in that post game press conference, and one of the things he was harping on is he's like, and you didn't see Zach Berman get cut once today, right? Because that was a big point of emphasis from that Atlanta game to that New Orleans game. And then to the second point about like the difference between the way the linebackers played this year and last year, one thing I kept hearing behind the scenes, sometimes this can get overstated, but I think in this case it did matter, is that Bobby King was like a really strong inside linebackers coach. And it goes to speak to the difference between the coaching staff in 23 and in 24, and that there were a lot of like everyone needs to get a first chance. It's what we talked about with Patullo, but that entire defensive staff or most of that defensive staff was inexperienced in 23. They were very experienced this year. And Bobby King's someone who had never worked for Vic Fangio before. He was one of the few guys on the staff who didn't have a Fangio connection. And Fangio spoke this year about like how he took to King right away in that coaching room.
Are you guys
go ahead.
Are you guys as surprised as I am that this defensive coaching staff is going to stay intact? I mean, it was the number 1 defense in the league, won the Super Bowl, a bunch of young assistants that everybody talks about how great they are. I'm like, I mean, it's not great for them maybe, but I'm very happy as an Eagles fan that they're all going to be back next year, it seems.
I'll jump in quick, and then I'm curious what Bo thinks. I'm not surprised because I think when you go to the Super Bowl and you win a Super Bowl, it actually hurts your position coaches for promotions. Like teams are typically waiting for head coaches, but they don't often wait for coordinators. And it'd be one thing if Kellen Moore brought a defensive coach with him, but typically even when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl the past 2 times, the only they did lose John DeFilippo to offensive coordinator in Minnesota, which I think Flip's contract was up actually at the time too, so that might have factored into it. But otherwise, a few years ago, they only lost like the guys Gannon took with him, and it wasn't like their whole staff was pilfered for promotions elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we will see that happen next offseason.
Yeah,
that's basically my guess there. As the Eagles try to fill out that linebacking core, because as Zach has told us, if they didn't bring back Zach Berman, they didn't really have anybody. And knowing that Nakobe Dean will not be ready for week 1, presumably, what are the types of players, without getting into specific guys themselves, Deniz, who you think would make sense in this defense and whatever the next iteration of Vic Fangio's unit is?
Yeah, well, I think the nice thing about this is that Zach Berman being flexible is probably like the only flexibility you really need, right? Like I think the other guy can be just like a regular off-ball linebacker, like an Oren Burks. I mean, like basically what Nakobe Dean was, right? Or is. I don't think you need a special kind of linebacker there. Now, someone who can cover enough that they're not going to be a liability matters, but we thought maybe, Oren Burks would be that liability, and he wasn't, at least in the limited games that we saw. So I think Fangio can make it work with anyone who's Oren Burks level, basically, and I don't think you need extra flexibility from that guy. Flexibility on the defensive line, maybe, for a guy who can tuck inside and play like the way that BG was doing, might be more important than flexibility with the second linebacker spot.
All right.
I know you guys have been talking about Dre'Mont Jones a lot, for example, someone like that. So.
Right. Let's put a button on this, take a quick break, and come back and dip our toes, maybe dive headfirst into the Sweet 16 of Quacketology. It's almost spring, and that means it's time to spring into savings. If you have financial goals, whether it's buying a house, taking that dream vacation, or building your emergency fund, TrueMark Financial Credit Union has the perfect savings account for you. TrueMark Financial offers high-rate certificates and money market accounts to help your money grow faster and work harder for you. Visit TrueMark.com for rates and to learn more. That's TrueMark.com. Federally insured by the NCUA. Rates are subject to change. Visit TrueMark.com for rates and to learn more. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Rates are subject to change.
I want to tell everyone about Ace Hardware Home Services. I'm driving around this morning, and I see the yard signs for Ace Hardware Home Services, and I know they're getting quality home services because at Ace Hardware Home Services, whenever they get ready for the next job, they remember what to bring. They bring experience, local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installations and upgrades. They bring understanding. They listen to your goals, and the job is not completed until you are satisfied, and they bring helpful to your home. So you can spend more of your time on the projects that really matter. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project.
All right, we should address, before we get going on Quacketology, the super chat from DFOP Claire, who says she has an important question, and the chat has been going back and forth on this throughout this episode. Zach, bacon or sausage?
I got to be honest with you. I'm not big on either of them. I know that might upset the chat. I didn't grow up a big breakfast food guy. And even now, I was out, Bo and I like this place, Cafe Patachu in Indianapolis. And you have to choose between bacon, sausage, or ham. And I went ham. So I'm not a huge bacon or sausage. I mean, if I had to choose one of those, I suppose bacon. I don't like sausage. So bacon on a sandwich, but I'm not really a big bacon person, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Deniz?
I need to know what kind of bacon and what kind of sausage we're talking. I mean, I love bacon and sausage, but I mean, there's so many varieties of both that, if we're talking like on a pizza, are we talking next to pancakes, like patties, links? Like, what are we talking?
Yeah, I think I agree that there's a lot of nuance to this answer. I would say more often than not, I'm leaning bacon, but on an egg McMuffin, give me that sausage patty all day long.
Right. So if you need it to be like a real meat, right, then you got to go with the sausage. But
sure, but give me a side piece of 2 strips of nice crunchy bacon. I'm feeling very good.
Crunchy is key, crispy is key. I think like the bacon. So I'm not a fan of Canadian bacon, for example. Like that would be like that would be like an example.
If you are holding out your bacon and it flops down, that's not good enough.
Yeah, then give me the sausage any day, or just give me a piece of ham at that point. But yeah, there we go.
Okay. Another super chat comes in from Bort, who says, ZB, Pecknest Migrate, a good food city, being excited for the show, and a shower after a hot day at training camp.
Probably sequentially in that order. So I would Peck a good food city. I love the travel, but I love being home more. So I would rather be at home than traveling. I would definitely Nest being excited for the show. If you're not excited about going to work every day, that's a problem. And then Migrate. I do like a shower after a hot day at training camp, but I guess I can get by with that. I would much rather go to a good food city, and especially being excited for the show.
Well, I guess in theory, pecking a good shower after training camp is not going to do much for you. It's just one day you get to shower. So
yes, exactly.
Okay, there you go. All right, let's get into it. Quacketology. Now, if you listen to the very end of yesterday's episode, boy, did I get the matchups in Quacketology wrong. Totally messed up my color coding, but we did go back to the tape. We got it correct. And so the Sweet 16, we begin in the Edge region with Khalil Mack against Joseph Ossai. Khalil Mack against Joseph Ossai. Now, here's one of the complications for Khalil Mack that we have to keep in mind, Zach, is the Chargers have like $100 million in cap space.
Sure.
Like, I think the second most in the league, second or third most in the league. And so having just released Joey Bosa, are they really going to let Khalil Mack go?
It's a good question. It's one I was wondering as well. I do know they're a big contender for DK Metcalf. That's something you're hearing. So there might be a reallocation of resources, getting younger. But Khalil Mack decided to return this year and decided to return to the Chargers. Now it's a different coaching staff than the group that acquired him. When they brought in Khalil Mack, Brandon Staley was there. Brandon Staley had a background with him from the Bears. But I mean, there's a lot of smoke there about Khalil Mack becoming available, but he's not available at this point.
Okay. Whereas Joseph Ossai would obviously be a much different type of addition that would be maybe saving room for a bigger ticket addition later on. adding a young guy with some upside to the pipeline, but would not be the be-all, end-all there. Deniz, how do you feel here?
Khalil Mack is 34. Joseph Ossai is 24, right? It's a very different. Joseph Ossai is very young. All I can think about with Joseph Ossai is his penalty in the AFC Championship game. I know he's done other things, but
poor guy.
Wait, am I incorrect? Is Khalil Mack a free agent though? I'm seeing conflicting things. He is unrestricted, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, but you're thinking the Chargers would re-sign him? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they let him get the free
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah.
I don't know. What kind of do you think there's any thought that losing, I don't know, Josh Sweat is gonna make them want a veteran? You know what I mean? Like, is there gonna be like a veteran young guy discussion in terms of the balance? I know, Zach, you talked about how Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce leaving the locker room kind of gave some of the leadership to the younger players, and getting younger was part of the reason that this team was closer. Is there going to be, I know the CJGJ thing with the vet was a big issue, was a topic yesterday. Do you think there's any kind of thoughts inside the building one way or the other about whether to go for veterans in free agency?
Yeah, I actually don't think that's going to be the priority is like looking for the veteran. I think they feel they have a strong locker room. I think this is just going to be about good players at the right price, comp pick formula being involved. So no, I understand the leadership topic, but I think that they view it, they're getting Baun back. They think Dean's a leader. Jalen Carter needs to step into, that type of role. Nolan Smith, someone who's well regarded in that area. So there's, I think there's almost a passing of the baton, if you will, from some of the leadership component of it. I don't think they would force a veteran, but of these two, I actually think Khalil Mack's most likely, because I think Khalil Mack could make more of a difference on next year's roster than Joseph Ossai. I think Joseph Ossai is a bit more projection. I know the age profile is more attractive, but I think the Eagles really like Jalen Hunt. Everything I've heard is they really like Jalen Hunt. And so I think that it's kind of looking for a guy to be on the team for a year or 2 years than as opposed to kind of looking for that core piece.
I think the veteran leadership thing, when you're coming to a team that just won the Super Bowl, it sort of solves itself, right? Like either you fit in or not. I don't think you're like taking over the culture in that standpoint, but I do think it's a consideration for them. Vinny talks about this all the time, about like the specific types of players they want in that building. And it's why having the touch point of Vic Fangio having coached him for a year probably matters to some degree. I think sometimes we can play that game too much of like looking for the connections. But when you're thinking about, okay, we're going to bring this 34-year-old into a team with a bunch of young, like he's going to be the only guy on defense over 28 years old. How is that going to fit? That's when, Vic Fangio's insight might have something to say, although something tells me that Vic Fangio probably cares a little bit less about the personality clash and more about the guy just being really good.
Yeah, and I think that they would probably embrace – I think they would embrace ring chasers more than like money chasers, right? In the sense that I think they're more interested in a guy who's still playing because like he wants to get a ring or he wants to enhance his legacy, as opposed to someone who's just like, I can collect a paycheck for a year. Playing football pays better than not playing football. And so that's more, I think, the research they do for older guys, because you see a little bit of both. And I think someone like Khalil Mack's probably of the ring chasing variety at this point.
Now, the thing that might make it less likely on Khalil Mack is, Khalil Mack is going to get paid, right? Sure. He's going to get a significant contract. And so if you're thinking about the comp pick formula, because he is a UFA, he's probably not going to get Milton Williams money. He might get similar to Josh Sweat money. And so,
you think so?
On a comp pick qualifying basis, if he's the one guy they bring in, then I think you're looking at, okay, maybe we still get that late third from Milton Williams, but maybe we're not going to get that fourth from Josh Sweat. We would get maybe Mekhi Becton ends up being a fourth too if he leaves. Yeah. But we're not going to get a third and a fourth like we would if we sign a guy for $8 million or whatever.
And I know they care a lot about the complex, but do you think that opportunity cost of a fourth rounder
probably
in a year and a half,
not if they love Khalil Mack,
would make them not get Khalil Mack? Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, I don't know, maybe the name's bigger than what his projection is at this point. But
and to be fair, his production did drop a little bit last year, so there's a possibility that he is close to the cliff, as it were.
So let me ask you, what's Joseph Ossai's role on the defense? Is he like is he a part of the core going forward? Is it what kind of contract? Is Joseph Ossai, because when we talked about, or I should say when I've talked about Baron Browning or Tommy Tremble, I look at them as like 1 year, rebuild their value guys, probably similar to what Zach Baun was last year. Are we talking about Joseph Ossai from that perspective? Like a Baun signing last year, you sign him for a 1 year deal. He's a fit. If it works out for him, he gets more money next year. Or are we talking about this? I don't want to say Bryce Huff, but as someone you're looking at as like part of your core for the next, 2 to 3 years.
Well, what's funny, you mentioned Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff and Joseph Ossai exactly next to each other on hitting the quarterback per pass rush over the past 2 seasons. 5.2%, the exact same on a very similar amount of rushes. To me, Joseph Ossai, given the age, he's probably a 2-year commitment, but for not a ton of money, unless he would rather get a middling 1 year deal to rebuild his value and go up. And he's still going to be 25, 26 next year, so that might be more lucrative to him.
Yeah,
I think his role on the team is Felix Hunt from this year. He's in terms of he's the third by the end of the season, the third edge rusher.
Yeah, I think
he played 543 snaps last year, so that's more comparable to what Nolan Smith played here than it is to.
I think the Eagles would be trapped to draft that type. I think if the Eagles are signing someone, I think they're signing someone to be a contributor on this defense, while to allow Felix Hunt to develop a little bit more, to kind of take that Sweat role for that. So I think you're looking for the Sweat replacement for this season. And I don't think they're thinking of like 2 to 5. Now, if Khalil Mack wanted a deal that stretches beyond that, I think the Eagles would not be as interested in him. But I think the Eagles would be interested in someone to fill that Josh Sweat role right now.
And you sounded confident, Zach, that we're also talking about replacing BG snaps, right?
I'm not confident in that, but I think, I feel more confident in that now than I did before the Super Bowl.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's move Khalil Mack on.
Okay.
Next up, Anthony Nelson or Azeez Ojulari. Now, this is to your point. Azeez Ojulari would be a player who would require a multi-year commitment, would be a more substantial part of the core moving forward, whereas Anthony Nelson would be more of the 1 year Band-Aid type who can do a lot of different things.
He's 28, right? He's not that old.
No, he's not that old.
Yeah.
You don't got to sell me on my man.
No. I'm going Nelson too. I mean, I don't know if I'm quite as big a fan of his film as you are, but Anthony Nelson is one of those guys who I've watched maybe more film of than I would have wanted.
You would have liked to, yeah.
Well, just because we played Tampa Bay all the time. Yeah. And especially when
this year,
them in the playoffs means I go back and watch multiple games. So I've watched a lot of Anthony Nelson. He's would fit in fine. I think would be good. I don't know if Ojulari is ever going to be good. I mean, that's one of those things where you're just like.
So I disagree on Ojulari. I think he is going to be good, and I think he'll be better at his next play. I think the Giants are going to regret losing him. I think the Giants should have traded him at the deadline. But the way I view this is, I had a piece out on Monday, my 25-step guide, if I were Howie Roseman, and I framed Azeez Ojulari as, if you don't keep Zach Baun, where do you pivot? And I thought you pivot to the $10 million edge rusher and the $7 million linebacker, right? Just to use the $17 million there. I thought that's kind of the way they would do it. I think now that they signed Baun, unless you're talking about your veteran type, Harold Landry and Khalil Mack would fit in that category, but I don't think they're looking to make that Bryce Huff types, that 25-year-old signing who's going to be part of this core for the next 3 years. I think they're more apt to draft that guy than they are sign that guy right now.
I agree. Anthony Nelson moves on. Next up, your boy, Zach, Baron Browning, going up against Jarran Reed. Now, first of all, on Jarran Reed, this is such a deep class of defensive tackles, both in the draft and free agency. It's a place where you can really get guys. I don't know if they like the player as much as his numbers indicate, but to me, that is like precisely the kind of player that they might add in free agency. Is a veteran defensive tackle who can take some snaps, just be a backup for. Like, I think Ojulari is probably ready to be the third down defensive tackle next to Jalen Carter, and we'll see what Jordan Davis does, but they probably want one other guy there. I think Jarran Reed makes sense to me. Baron Browning they need another linebacker. I don't know what they think of Baron Browning.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Browning here from the versatility perspective. I think that role that they saw Baun in last year is a role that they want to have on this defense. That versatile piece is someone that they want to have on this defense who can help you in multiple spots. I hear what you're saying regarding Jarran Reed, but I also think it is such a deep class that I don't think it's like, do you need to go target Jarran Reed? Do you need to go target what is he, 32? A 32-year-old defensive tackle.
I don't think they're going to sign a defensive tackle on the first day of free agency. I think it's a pretty good group of like veteran free agent defensive tackles. I think this is one where if he's there a week in, we'd love to have him.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the need at defensive tackle, I think the big question is, are they interested in insurance for a Jalen Carter injury, right? Because Jalen Carter plays so many of the defensive tackle snaps that you need. Like, he plays about around 40% of the total defensive tackle snaps that you need, right? Like, he plays about 80, between 80 and 90% just by himself, which means that when he's playing, like, you really only need to fill like one defensive tackle spot. We talked about how little base they played last year. I think that's going to continue next year, where they're going to want to continue to have Cooper DeJean on the field and not play a lot of 3 defensive tackle snaps, which means that Moro Ojulari, remember, he was out snapping Milton Williams on late passing downs for the first month of the season. I was coming on the show, like, counting those stats, counting those snaps, and no one really cared because Milton Williams wasn't this like guy that people thought would make $20 million the next year. But I mean, he and Moro Ojulari were playing comparable snaps for decent chunks of the season. I think Ojulari is totally ready to step up. And I from what a bunch of Zach and others have said about what they're saying about him, it seems like that's the case. So yeah, I agree that you don't need to bring in a guy on the first day who's going to play a lot of snaps. You basically need a guy to replace the snaps that Moro Ojulari was playing this year. And Moro Ojulari can replace Milton Williams, right?
Now I'm going to throw someone else into the mix here. I was having a back and forth with wannabe GM on Blue Sky, who was stumping for Jack Sanborn, the former Wisconsin linebacker, former teammate of Zach Baun, who was the third linebacker in Chicago last season. And obviously they pay a lot of money to those other 2 linebackers. And he was scheduled to be a restricted free agent. Bears are not tendering him, which would be like $3.5 million, making the case here that Sanborn, better suited at both linebacker and edge than Baron Browning, brings some real thump in the running game and is willing, at least in coverage on the edge. Would not be a great coverage middle linebacker, but in terms of a potential answer for what happens until Nakobe Dean comes back, likes him a lot more than Baron Browning. I'm okay to just hot shot Jack Sanborn in.
Well, so I will add this. As much as I have an affinity for Baron Browning, and that is pretty clear. I've been on record stating that. I think the big difference between Baron Browning and Zach Baun last year, just from a profile perspective, is Baron Browning has not been a special teams contributor in his career, whereas when they signed Oren Burks was a major special teams contributor. Jack Sanborn is a major special teams contributor. I believe he played 80% of the special team snaps last year, thereabouts, for Chicago. So for that profile, or I actually don't even think Sanborn would be in the profile I was using for Zach Baun signing last year. He's of the Oren Burks signing last year. He would be your Oren Burks replacement, is your third linebacker who can contribute on special teams. I can see Sanborn there.
Well, Baron Browning didn't play any inside linebacker last year. I mean, he played.
Or the year before.
No, I know that. But his rookie year with Vic Fangio, he played 60% of the snaps as an inside.
Oh, right. That's right. You guys were saying
That's
so you're saying that he might prefer him to an Oren Burks.
No, I'm saying
on what he saw before.
I'm saying Sanborn can fill the Oren Burks role as your third
He's saying
linebacker.
it's a different type of signing.
It's a different style.
Yeah, I got you.
Browning to me is what Baun was last year, which was he can help you as a pass rusher. He can help you off ball. Like he's the Van Ginkel.
I think the difference is I think the difference between there's a lot of differences between
already
Browning
have
and Baun because Baun was like a one in a million type result, but it was speculative. He had never been asked to play middle linebacker, whereas Browning did.
Yeah,
the league watched him for a year and then never asked him to do it again.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not exactly the best of the best,
not the league,
in terms of the defensive staff that he's playing for right now.
Yeah,
that's true.
I would push back on like the league didn't watch him and say that. The Vance Joseph watched him and said that, right? Like it was that Denver coaching staff. He was a starter in Denver. Okay. He was so it's not as if he was available for 32 teams to sign and everyone was like he's not an inside backer. No, so it was the coaching staff they had there, and he went into this past year as thought to be an emerging edge rusher, and it just didn't work out. And Nick Bonito and some other guys played better.
All right, I'm doing it. Jack Sanborn moves to the Elite Eight. Okay. What a move.
All right, there we go.
Nobody saw that coming. That's good booking. All right, take a quick break to hear from our sponsors again as we move on. Tell you about, Zach, you want to go? You want to tell us about our friends at Timeline?
Yeah, I did. I came home last night or after the show, and I said to Emily, Emily, I'm going to live longer. And the reason I'm going to live longer is because I got Timeline. And I was telling her all about it. And the great thing is I was telling her about the cells in our bodies that are the building blocks of life. And that Timeline is a supplement that works with those cells to help you give more energy, feel stronger during workouts, and preserve health and mobility as you start to age. And Reed was in the room, and Reed's like, what is that? And I said, Reed, have you ever heard of MitoPure? Because what it is it's a postbiotic nutrient that clears out dysfunctional mitochondria, which is your cell's battery packs. And so Reed is in first grade, so he's not at that level of science yet where he's learning about mitochondria. But I say, when you do, you should tell your teacher about MitoPure because it recharges your cells and helps your body system work better. It's the only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level, and it's shown to deliver double-digit increase in muscle strength and endurance without a change in exercise. That is a major win. You get to this point where your age starts to catch up with you. I imagine our audience feels that way as well. Get ready to be your best, most energized, most revitalized self. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/PHLY. That's timeline.com/PHLY.
And I'll tell you about Bet365, where it's never ordinary. Never ordinary at Bet365, whatever the moment. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, and they live stream over 780,000 events each year with early payout offers across the NBA and NHL. Bet365 pioneer live in-game betting, and today they offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up. Use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get that $150 in bonus bets. Again, win or lose. Tomorrow is Saturday. You know what that means? Slam Dunk Saturday. It's another Bet365 Slam Dunk Saturday. Place qualifying parlay bets totaling $20 or more on today's games and get up to $25 in bonus bets. Terms and conditions, they apply. Breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Win or lose. Sign up. Use the code PHLY365. Deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We don't have to interrupt the Quacketology, but at the end of the show, I do have an NFL front office that I want to take to task.
What a tease.
Yes.
Are they sub-Stifler level in your eyes?
I was just going to ask the same thing.
Yeah. No, it's not quite at the Giants last week. Here, I'll just say it now, and it'll be 45 seconds, okay? That's all it is. But the Seattle Seahawks are upset that DK Metcalf's trade request came on Tyler Lockett Day, a day that they wanted to be about. Did you see this? They're really the Seahawks are upset because they released Tyler Lockett, and they were talking up how much he meant to the organization, and then the DK Metcalf trade release got leaked. And this is something that the Seahawks are upset about. And I gotta say, the Seahawks fired Tyler Lockett. And the Tyler Lockett Day is essentially just like a graphic on social media we're talking about here. If you love Tyler Lockett this much, you're not you fired the guy. All right. You don't get
with Stacey's Day, at least it was a guy who was coming in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not giving you your flowers for releasing him and putting out a nice graphic, and then you're upset that the other wide receiver stole the news cycle. Okay. Because to me, I don't know if you guys saw this. I don't know if the audience saw this.
I actually didn't see this.
And I'm like, come on, this is. I also don't like it when teams complain about leaked stuff from players, because teams are always leaking stuff, right? So it's you can't have it both ways. Yeah. So they don't like that this trade request was leaked on Tyler Lockett Day, and I actually think John Schneider went on record saying that, and. You released the guy. You fired him, basically. Yeah. All right. You don't get your flowers for putting out a social media graphic.
I think that's a good take.
Thank you. I saw that this morning, and I'm
my favorite of the offseason is still the Bucks. Liam Cohen won't answer his phone. He's ghosting us. He's not answering his phone. Calm down.
Yeah.
All right. Benjamin St-Juste goes up against Malik Harrison. Where do you guys land?
Malik Harrison for the. I know you guys rejected my Baron Browning type, but I think Malik Harris. I do think the Eagles are going to look for that type of player. And Malik Harrison, by the way, has been a major special teams contributor. So he's someone who actually probably, from a fit perspective. If you're looking at the role that the Eagles signed Baun to play last year, Malik Harrison would make sense in that role.
Yes, for the reasons that Fran told us, St-Juste not a great fit. Now, we were talking before the show, Deniz. You asked about Rasul Douglas, who I thought was in the bracket and actually wasn't in the bracket. Is more of a zone corner, would fit schematically. My understanding is the Bills are trying to bring him back, but I could be wrong about that. And
yeah.
He's also.
Rasul Douglas is a guy who has been good, and he would fit the scheme well. I mean, he's always been a good zone corner. So, he's also obviously big and a good tackler and all those things. So
he'll be 30.
He would excite me more than St-Juste, but maybe I don't know how much of that is nostalgia and how much of it is being rational here. Oh. But I don't know. St-Juste, maybe it's his games against the Eagles or something, but he doesn't seem like a guy who would be all that valuable to the guys you have already. Now, here's a question, Zach. How many turkeys on Slay coming back?
I'm putting 15 turkeys on Slay coming back. I think Slay's going to get money.
That's higher than I thought.
Okay. Yeah, I think Slay's getting paid somewhere else.
And then how many turkeys on? I thought you were going to say 3 or something. So and what about on Isaiah Rodgers coming back?
Oh, I would put much. I'd put 60 turkeys on Isaiah Rodgers coming back. I don't think Isaiah Rodgers is going to have this robust market that we were talking about when we did when we were talking about him earlier this week. I don't know if he played enough to like really jump to where the league's saying he's going to be a starting cornerback here next year.
Yeah, I see. I think the outside corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell is very, very important, right? Because that guy is going to get a lot of targets next year. Like Quinyon Mitchell is a guy who, even as a rookie, and with Slay playing on the other side, there were games where people just weren't throwing to his side. That's going to happen even more next year if things go normally, and that means that it's very important who that other guy is. I personally am okay with Isaiah Rodgers and Kelee Ringo, like the better of those two in camp, being the starter on that side. And so I don't know if I'd go out of my way to sign a guy like a St-Juste, but I was curious, like what you thought the odds were of those guys coming back. So
where do you stand on Cooper DeJean on the outside?
I would not move him to the outside for like regular nickel snaps. I mean, I would keep him on the inside. And then we've talked about how little base Fangio had played after DeJean started playing. Now, that could change due to circumstances and the way teams play against the Eagles, or due to who the other corner is or whatever else. So there could be more base than there was this year, but I would certainly not move DeJean away. I think like one of the biggest advantages of keeping Baun and DeJean is how well they work together as the under three. We talked about how much quarters Fangio played. And what quarters means is basically the two linebackers and DeJean are working together to cover a very large part of the underneath part of that field, whereas the outside corner is playing, it has a completely different role in that coverage. So I would keep DeJean there because he's already shown that he's so good at it, not to mention his flexibility playing on the edge as the fifth defensive lineman, which is crazy to say for a nickelback, but he did that a handful of times and he did it just fine. And then his ability to stop the run as well. So I would definitely keep DeJean on the inside.
I think with Isaiah Rodgers, now listen, the idea of when he's in the game, they're going to throw at him. That's exactly what happened when he came into the game this year for Darius Slay, and he pretty much always acquitted himself well. I think there's a known quantity there for the Eagles. I think it does make sense to let him and Ringo, fight it out, and whoever wins, that's great. But I do think it is worth noting that as much carryover as there is going to be on defense, and this is the best defense in football, it is like it's a weak link system, right? Like, and so if the defense is going to struggle, the idea that they don't have a good enough second corner is one way that they could struggle. It could hamstring everything.
One thing I just want to reinforce, I want to reinforce here is, Howie Roseman doesn't tell you his plans, of course, but there are certain things that he tries to signal in his public messaging. And the amount of times he kept saying that they need their young guys to play this year was not an accident. I think that there are all these spots that we're talking about on defense, where obviously Ojima, but J-Alex Hunt, Kelee Ringo. I think I think they are. I don't want to say sink or swim with these guys, but I don't think they're gonna block Kelee Ringo from getting a chance to compete for a starting job next year. I feel strongly about that.
Thank you for watching on Fast. We will continue this conversation on allphly.com. All right.
With Isaiah Rodgers, one thing is when he did lose, he lost at the catch point while he was in close coverage. And I feel like that's almost like a little bit more fluky than if he was just getting beat. You know what I mean? Like he seemed to be near the guy he was covering every time they threw at him. Sometimes he just somehow lost the ball at the catch point, ball went through his hand, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that happened, but guys just stole the ball from him one time, that kind of thing. But I haven't seen that consistently enough from Kelee Ringo to be confident, but if they're saying that in the building, then, maybe.
Well, I would just say Vic Fangio has made it clear that he likes Isaiah Rodgers more than Kelee Ringo, right? So this could be one.
Liked him more.
Or liked him more. Yeah. I think this could be one more front office versus coach. I don't want to say front office versus coaching staff, but Howie traded a third-round pick for Kelee Ringo. Kelee Ringo was one of the youngest players in that draft. So I think there is an organizational investment in Kelee Ringo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kelee Ringo is like a full year younger than Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah.
Just for context sake, I think they are still very bullish on him in the building.
Yes.
I think they point to his special team snaps from this year as being indicative of the kinds of things they're asking him to do at corner. I think they like him a lot.
And his
all right,
answers to Bo's questions at the Super Bowl made me even more bullish on him, like the level of detail that he remembered from those
there you
specific
go.
games. Yeah.
All right, we move to offense. Jedrick Wills, the Mekhi Becton pipeline of moving a early first-round pick from tackle to guard, or Raheem Mostert, bring back the old man to compete with Will Shipley?
I guess Jedrick Wills, because I don't know how much they're going to be running to sign a running back, especially an older running back. I think there's a chance Jedrick Wills gets a starting job somewhere else. But if he wanted to go to Jeff Stoutland University here, I do think it is a real thing in the league that if you're a talented offensive lineman, you can come to Philly and rebuild your value. I think that is clear, not just from the player side. I think that's abundantly clear from the agent side. And I think there are agents who will advise their players, if this isn't a good situation for you, go to Philly, work with Jeff Stoutland.
That's good insight, and it's actually part of the reason why you could be convinced to not re-sign Mekhi Becton, because you have signaled this to the rest of the league that this is a good place to come rebuild your value.
Yeah, and it's something actually that Jake Rosenberg actually spoke about, where I think he said it on social media, where the good agents, and I think he has a very good relationship with with Mekhi Becton's agent, maybe who was I'm sorry, this was about Fred Johnson. He has a very good relationship with Drew Rosenhaus. He was talking about Fred Johnson, and he said that Drew specifically funneled Fred Johnson to Philadelphia, saying, you're going to want to go here and work with Jeff Stoutland. It was a response. Actually, I put that tweet out about how, Stoutland rebuilt Fred Johnson's career. And he said the good agents recognize this. And I think there is an understanding that you can go to Philly and rebuild your value.
Deniz, where do you come down on the Mekhi Becton question and how to proceed at right guard?
I think I'm a little bit less bullish on Tyler Steen than the average person. I'm not like totally anti him, but I think going into
the average person has no idea who he is.
Well, okay, sorry. The average person who follows the Eagles, I know, like Jimmy Kempski, for example, is like very confident that he can, Tyler Steen can come in, and I know he's done film breakdowns, like highlighting some of his positive plays. I think that every time he comes in, he looks fine watching live. And then when you watch the film, there's always like a couple of things where it's like, ooh, like Steen kind of messed that play up, or someone had to make up for him or whatever. Now, when he gets the whole, off season as the starter, et cetera, you can make that argument. But at the same time, he was kind of scheduled to be that guy this year. And they brought in Mekhi Becton out of nowhere and immediately lost the job to him, right? A guy who had never played guard before. So that didn't make me feel any more. So Cousin Grace says, I don't think most people are bullish on Steen. Maybe I'm thinking about before last year, people were more bullish on him. Steen's fine, but I think like ideally a guy of Steen's level is going to remain a backup, right? Like not be the starter. I don't think that this team doesn't play starters on the offensive line who are going to be liabilities, right? Like that just hasn't happened like in years where one of the guys is like, oh man, that guy's kind of the weak point of the offensive line. It just hasn't happened. And so I am not that high on Steen. Now, keeping Becton, if it's too expensive, then I guess you need some sort of other option. But I'm a little concerned with this idea that like, well, Becton earned it. He can go make his money somewhere else and we'll just put Steen in. I'm a little more worried about that.
I think to your point and the larger discussion we're having, I think they are more likely to make sure they're safe at right guard than at corner, for instance. I think they're more likely to let Kelee Ringo sink or swim than they are to let Tyler Steen sink or swim without true competition. I think they care more about not having the weak link on the offensive line.
That might be right. And part of that is the nature of the way the roster is composed. The next guy in a corner is probably going to be closer level to him than the next guy in that, some guy you signed to be or drafted to be a backup at offensive line isn't going to be able to just fill in, right? If you have Steen be the guy coming in and he doesn't play well, you're kind of screwed, right? Like you're not going to have another guy who's just going to be able to come in and play at a starter level there. So
I also want to speak to this idea that Becton, it's clear Becton loves it here and Becton wants to be back. But this idea that Becton would take a team-friendly deal to play here, look, this is a lot of money no matter how you slice it. But so let's talk about percentages instead of dollars, right? If you're talking about like a 10% difference, guys would do that. But if you're talking about like a 50% difference in value, guys don't leave that on the table. So if the difference is like 10 plus million and 6 million, I mean, if I was advising Mekhi Becton, I would say no matter how much you like playing for Jeff Stoutland or in
Do
Philadelphia,
you want to hand me over $4 million?
yeah, like don't leave that on the table. So yeah, if it's close, I see it, but if Becton's market's what I think it's going to be, I have a hard time seeing the Eagles getting near that money.
Can we ask the behavioral economist about this? Economist?
I've always not fully been able to comprehend amounts of money this large. like on my end, like people ask me sometimes about these things because I'm an economist, just like you're doing now. I just can't. We teach diminishing marginal utility, right? Like where you don't enjoy the and in class I always use the example, like if someone gives you $10 million, that'll make a big difference in your life. The next $10 million might not make a big difference, right? Because you already have the first 10 million. And the numbers we're talking about with these athletes, now I understand their careers are short, right? And their earnings are going to dip a lot, once they stop playing. But sometimes with that amount of money, and I know Vinny's talked about it on the show, I do see how players sometimes regret going for the money and not being happy where they are and having to move their family and all those kinds of things. So I think a lot of people are looking at that Mekhi Becton crying after the Super Bowl clip and thinking that guy can't leave, right? But we understand that that's not always the way it is. So,
all right. So Jedrick Wills advances.
Yes. Yeah, most
Jedrick Wills. I mean, the scouting report on him is that he's athletic and a good pass setter, and that he has problems against stunts and things like that. I mean, a couple of those coyote drills, and he'll be
different.
Set.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's a different profile than Becton. He's less physically imposing. Okay, John Bates, the blocking tight end from the Commanders, or Ben Cleveland, the benched mammoth guard from the Ravens?
I think Ben Cleveland. I think Ben Cleveland's the kind of guard that I could see them going after. What about you?
Yeah, John Bates is one of the least exciting free agents I've ever thought about.
I'm going with Cleveland Ben as well. All right, a big one here. Now we're gonna bring in another. This time we're bringing in someone who's already been eliminated, and we're turning this matchup into a three-way. Myles Garrett versus Michael Mayer versus the person he defeated in the first round. Harold Landry is back. Harold Landry, Michael Mayer, or Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Landry, and this is a change to the equation today, because you don't have to trade for him. Obviously, there's no comp pick, but you don't have to trade for him, and I think similar to the Khalil Mack conversation, I think you can talk about Harold Landry being a part of your defense for 2 years, 1 to 2 years, and it's not like you're thinking of your long-term core player. Myles Garrett, there's obstacles obviously that we've discussed. I think they would love Myles Garrett. Michael Mayer would be a player who, especially if they moved on from that. What's that?
It's a good rhyme.
There's a rhyme, yeah.
Yeah, if they moved on from Dallas Goedert, or if they traded Dallas Goedert, I think Michael Mayer makes a lot of sense. But Landry, there's the least resistance, and there's a clear role because they don't have the depth at edge rusher that they have at defensive tackle.
We got to talk more about Goedert in a second, but this is what we think is most likely, right?
Is what?
This whole game, Quacketology.
Yes, yeah, oh yes. Yeah, this isn't what we like. This is Yeah.
So I mean, I think this is Harold Landry easily. He's exactly the kind of thing that I can.
Someone just alerted me to this. I had no idea that Ben Cleveland had a bunch of off the field stuff going on right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I did not either.
All right.
So congratulations to John Bates for making it to the Elite Eight.
So disqualification. Why don't we? How about we put
DQ'd?
Let's put Harold Landry against John Bates. How about that? And let's have instead of a three-way, let's eliminate.
I like that.
That sounded weird to say. Don't make
that
a
menage. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Landry beats Bates.
Harold Landry takes John Bates's place and moves on.
Okay.
And so John Mayer takes out Myles Garrett.
Michael Mayer versus Garrett. What do you guys think? I actually think Garrett here. I'm going Garrett more than Mayer. What do you think?
Sure. Sorry,
what's
I'm just
your,
looking at the off the field stuff. Okay.
Yeah, what's your Goedert?
Remember the John Mayer sketch on Chappelle's show, Zach? That's the one piece of John Mayer pop culture we did not address the other day.
Not familiar with that sketch. No.
Oh, he's playing music at the barbershop.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It's a good
I
little
gotta check
one.
that out. I gotta check that out.
You got to check that out.
Yeah.
Chat, tell us, Michael Mayer or Myles Garrett? You have about 12 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Ooh.
9,
Ooh, it's very tight.
11,
What? It's like tied.
12. I believe it's tight end as a wonderland. Michael Mayer is
Okay.
moving on by the skin of his teeth, trying to take sexual napalm all the way to the Final Four. We close out this Sweet 16. Dre'Mont Jones, the former Vic Fangio player, defensive tackle by trade, although was asked to play on the edge last year in Seattle, released. Does not count against the comp pick for him. That's still young enough. And he's going up against Zach's boy, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, definitely Dre'Mont Jones here, without a doubt. And I like Dre'Mont Jones quite. We'll talk about this advancing. Dre'Mont Jones to me is such a good fit for the Eagles.
Okay, let's go Elite Eight. Khalil Mack against Anthony Nelson.
Bo, I have too much respect for you to answer this, so I'll defer to you here. I'm going to let
You have
you.
too much respect for me to answer it, so I asked you a question and you're going to respect me by not answering?
Well, look, I mean,
it's not about who's a better player. It's you tell
Yeah.
me your understanding of the Eagles' operating philosophy. Are they going to add a big ticket 33-year-old on the edge, or are they going to try to add a guy to the rotation?
I just don't know how big a ticket we're talking Mac is going to be. I mean, I was surprised when you said you're talking about Josh Sweat money. I thought this was going to be like 10 to 12 million for Mac.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you meant in terms of canceling out the comp pick formula.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think Khalil Mack makes more sense here.
I think Mack too, unless Fangio has some reason to think that like he's not going to be useful at this point.
Khalil Mack has had an incredibly decorated career, probably a Hall of Famer, and yet, for the very first time in that illustrious career, he has advanced to the Quacketology Final Four. Congratulations to the Mack family. Next up.
He's never been a free agent before. Is that right? He's never been on the open market.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think he's only been an extension guy.
Okay. Next up, one of the surprises of the tournament. I mean, you talk about a Cinderella story. How about somebody entering the competition in the Sweet 16? Jack Sanborn taking on Malik Harrison.
I like Harrison more because I like that role. Look, I've already repeated this 15 times. That role.
It's not about what you like. It's about what.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I think they're more apt to sign for that role. I think they're more apt to sign for that, the versatility that Harrison provides. Also, I think in terms of duplication, I think Sanborn's more comparable to Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Okay, and I don't think they have someone who.
I think he does more on the edge.
Sanborn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was thinking, look, Sanborn is a Wisconsin guy, and the Eagles could see like that Van Ginkel, Zach Baun, Leo Chenal, like that's a type. That is a type for sure. And
but are you putting Sanborn in that category? Sanborn's not nearly as athletic as those guys.
I know, but Bo says Sanborn can help more on the edge than
no, not more on the edge than in the middle, more on the edge than Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Than Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Yeah,
sure, but I don't think that Fangio would want Sanborn to be playing as.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I like Harrison more here, but I'm not. I'll pound the table for Dre'Mont Jones. I'm not pounding the table for Harrison over Sanborn.
This does remind me my one disappointment from the Eagles mic'd up from the Super Bowl that they debuted last night. I mean, we get the shot of Trotter, the elder. We get it's like Chekhov's Trotter, and then we get the axe, and we don't see his reaction. I need eyes on him for that.
Yeah.
Or the two of them, That was the other. Actually, that reminds me. That was the other great Zach Baun line. Is that after Trotter does the axe?
Oh, he finally did it.
Yeah. Zach Baun speaks for everybody. He's like, he finally did it.
Yeah, he had done it in an earlier game, but yeah, I think I am speaking for all the fans here. The amount of footage that they obviously have from the Super Bowl with all the mic'd up stuff, the following all the players around who they have mic'd up, all the different angles we keep seeing from all these different things. I mean, man, just release it. Like turn it into like a 10-hour, 10-part thing that like the true fans can just.
They're charging you $60 for snow. How about $60 for that?
Oh, I would. I mean, if they made it like 12 hours, I would watch all 12 hours. Like, there's nothing that would say it would be the best TV show of the offseason. So I wish they would just release more of that stuff. It doesn't all have to be so super tightly edited and dramatic and everything. I just want to see, like, every time they show like the players walking out of the locker room, like that's obviously like 10 minutes of footage of that. Like, just show me the whole thing, Like, somebody posted just the last 10 minutes of Jalen on the sideline. I don't know if you guys saw that. Yeah. There was a fan just took a video of the last 10 minutes of Jalen just walking around the sideline. He's not even in the game. And you can see everybody hugging each other and everything. And I watched that like 3 times. Like, that was like, just because you see so many different players like coming to him and talking to him. And I don't know. I think that stuff is under provided as a product by the NFL.
I would love the raw footage, man. I mean, what I would do to get that raw footage right now would be enormously helpful.
Fran might know some people. Fran might know some people, Zach.
Yeah, I mean that would be so extraordinarily valuable to me.
Can you sing the song, Zach?
I'm not singing on here. No.
Ooh, baby, I like it raw. Ooh, baby, I like it raw.
Yeah.
Can't get that out of you?
Raw footage. No, I didn't even know that was a song, to be honest with you.
Okay.
You and I listen to different music.
Malik Harrison is advancing over Jack Sanborn. That's kind of sad. I mean, you're gonna snuff the torch on this inspiring Jack Sanborn Cinderella story?
You can be a Sanborn guy. I'm more of a Harrison guy.
All these guys they fought through. Like, the
it's not about who we like. Yeah. Stop doing that.
Relax.
Fangio's not going to want Jack Sanborn on the team.
All right, fine. Malik Harrison, Jedrick Wills, or Harold Landry?
Harold Landry.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think Jedrick Wills is more apt to get a starting job. I think the Eagles are more apt to pay for an edge rusher.
Michael John Mayer or Dre'Mont Jones?
Dre'Mont Jones, less resistance to getting him. Number one, you don't have to trade. And I think if the Eagles are acquiring now, if Dallas Goedert is traded, then the Eagles need a new backup tight end. But the Eagles, I know they need to address their defensive front. And Dre'Mont Jones makes a lot of sense here.
Do you feel
is the understanding here that Dallas Goedert just doesn't want to play?
Let's talk Dallas Goedert here.
Yeah, does Dallas Goedert not want to play as a lame duck kind of year? Is that the reason for all of this chatter of him not coming back?
I think that they're I don't want to speak for Dallas, but I imagine he probably wants some clarity on his future. I think Bo put it really well yesterday that if you let a guy go into the last year of his deal, that often says what you think of him. The Eagles have taken care of all these other core guys. It's frankly, it's a similar situation to Josh Sweat last year, right? And the Eagles, they restructured Sweat's deal to make him a lame duck player, basically. The difference is Josh Sweat's 27-year-old season. It's Dallas Goedert's 30-year-old season. I think that if you're Dallas Goedert, you probably want some resolution on this now as opposed to next year. 31 years old. Like I said, if the injuries continue, Dallas Goedert's market's limited, or I should say not as robust. I think Dallas Goedert would be extraordinarily valuable right now. Now, Evan Ingram was just released, and so there's competition on the tight end market. But Dallas Goedert's well-regarded in the league, so I imagine that. And look, the Eagles just paid a lot of money for Zach Berman, so I think that could kind of affect the way things are internally as well.
Yeah, I mean, other than the injuries, for me, like Dallas Goedert is still a very valuable player. Like if you knew he wasn't going to miss more than X games a year, which I don't know how you can know that at this point. It's strange to me that they brought him in as a Zach Ertz replacement, like a little bit too early, famously. And now there's talk of just letting him go without having an obvious replacement, right? Like, I mean, Grant Calcaterra is not a replacement for Dallas Goedert. Like, he's not as good a receiver. He's not as good a blocker. Like, he's just not as good at all. You'd have to bring in a guy over Grant Calcaterra. So unless they have like a plan for that, I'm very surprised that they would just take this kind of like Super Bowl winning offense and get rid of one of the guys that the head coach constantly talks about as one of the 3 guys that the passing game runs through. And I know people tease me about his impact in the run game, but at the end of the day, like Saquon Barkley did have over 1 yard more per carry when he was on the field. Like, you know, was the 2nd best running back in the league with him on the field and the 10th best without him on the field. You don't know that the guy you bring in is going to be able to do the things that Dallas Goedert does. So I'm just very surprised that this is that you and McLean and some other people are talking as if he's gone. That kind of took me by surprise this week.
Deniz, was the Saquon extension, was that the first bad day you've had since the Eagles won the Super Bowl?
No, so I know everyone's asking me this. I think the details on his contract were just reported, and I think I'm seeing from reliable sources that his cap hit is going to be about $500,000 less than it would have been without the extension. So that's the question that people had. I'm perfectly fine with this, and the reason is that based on how everyone on the team clearly feels about his impact, including the leadership side of things, which won't deteriorate, even if his body will, the total amount of money doesn't seem egregious to me at all. Running backs are not paid that much, and I think that's rightfully so for the reasons that we've talked about. And even the highest paid one ever, which is what Saquon just became, is making less than someone like Milton Williams will, right? So if it makes everyone feel like Saquon's getting what he deserves and avoiding the conversation during the season next year, then that's fine with me. Like, I know some people have said that this is kind of like learning from T.O., like they didn't do this with T.O. and they're doing this with Saquon. The amount of money involved in running backs is still relatively low, right? And so I don't think this is like a big deal. I don't think we're going to go look back at the season and be like, oh, they paid Saquon so they couldn't get this guy, so they weren't good there. I don't think that's what this is going to be.
So am I reading this right, that you are hoping to move the spotlight from Saquon Barkley as the player you hate to Milton Williams as the player you hate?
I feel so bad about this because I feel like I've been like a Milton Williams fan more than others throughout his career here, but it's getting a little crazy with the Milton Williams stuff, don't you think? Like I've been a fan the whole time he's been here, but I mean, you're talking about people were saying that if he and Zach Baun could stay at the same money, which first of all, it's not going to be the same money. Milton's going to get paid more, right? But even if it were the same money, like people were like, oh yeah, you got to bring Milton Williams back, right? He's like a homegrown guy who plays a more valuable position. I mean, you were talking about a guy who's played 47% of the snaps this year. And he was the guy benefiting from double teams the whole season. Like Jalen Carter never came off the field, which means we basically never saw Milton Williams as being the guy that the offensive line was focused on. And so, listen, if he goes to a bad defense, plays the whole game and gets double teamed and is still effective, then I'll be proven wrong, right? But we haven't seen him do any of those things. Like, he hasn't been the focus of the offense. And so for me, if you're getting that kind of money, you have to be the one drawing the double teams, right? Not the one benefiting from the double teams. And if you can project from his film that he's going to be able to do that, then go ahead, pay him whatever, $20 million. But I just don't see how you're getting that out of watching what Milton Williams has done so far. So
I like the comment from Rob that said, is that the professor or Tom Donahoe in the middle?
Listen, that's why I feel bad. Like I've been pro Milton Williams the whole time. I think he's gone from like underrated to overrated very fast. He was like he was never rated at the correct level. like he just went from like underrated by almost everybody to overrated by almost everybody, which is one of the things that happens when your team is awesome and you're on a contract year. So that's fine. Good for him. I hope he gets as much as he can, but I totally am okay with letting him go if he's going to cost as much as like a star defensive tackle costs, which he's never shown that he can be that. So
I'll just get back to the Goedert conversation real quick, because you brought up a fair point, and I keep going back to what Bo said about them telling you what they think of you if you enter the last year of his deal. The benefit of covering a GM who's been here for a long time is you have a lot of history to evaluate. Mm-hmm. And in the last, let's say like 5 to 8 years, the last time they allowed a big money player, so let's say $10+ million player, get to the last year of his deal, was Josh Sweat last year when they literally tried to trade him, and Javon Hargrave. And the Javon Hargrave situation was, I don't even know if they thought he was going to play as well as he did that third year and then be at 20 million. I just think they really liked Hargrave. He made $20 million on the open market. But typically the Eagles, they either trade you or they extend you or cut you. That's kind of been their MO. And that's what was happening with Sweat last year. That's what happened with Reddick last year. It's just been, or there have been times when they get ahead and they extend you. But it's very seldom that they let a big money player play on that last year when there's no guaranteed money on the deal. And the players know, and the agents know that, and the players know that.
So we're going Dre'Mont Jones over Michael Mayer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I actually think Dre'Mont Jones could be like Duke this year or Auburn this year and have a good shot at pushing this.
Why are you going to make it about Duke?
Auburn. Let's say Auburn. Bruce Pearl.
All right. Yeah, there's a guy we love. All right. Final
You
four.
don't like Bruce Pearl?
Final four.
Oh, coach. Yep.
Khalil Mack against Malik Harrison. Now, is it Khalil Mack or is it Mack Khalil?
It is Khalil Mack, and I'm going.
Is it
Khalil
Malik
Mack
Harrison
here.
or is it Harrison Malik?
It is Khalil. It is Malik Harrison. It is Khalil Mack, and let's go with Khalil Mack here. What do you think, Deniz?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think the versatility that you're talking about with Malik Harrison is something they're going to be looking for now that Baun's back, right? If Baun hadn't come back, then you're looking for a guy like that. But I think Khalil Mack, I mean, it kind of fits the whole little bit of that, like Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph style, like bring in the big name who's looking for a ring.
Miles Jack, Zach Cunningham.
Yeah, well, I was trying to forget about those guys. By the way, I love that CJ called out Kevin Byard for just like Kevin Byard taking strays. Like that made my day yesterday. Like I don't even care about that whole debate with Slay and everything, but as soon as Kevin Byard got involved, I immediately opened my eyes, and it just made me love the tweet more. So anything that's anti Kevin Byard just makes me happy.
Yeah. I also think to the Mack versus Harrison conversation, there's something to be said about players who they've had a chance to sign before, right? And like, not to say they already showed you what they thought of them, but Harrison was a free agent, and he re-signed in Baltimore on a 1-year deal for not a lot of money. So yeah. I think that sometimes that shows you what their pro scouting department's evaluation was.
Landry Harold or John Dre'Mont?
It's Dre'Mont Jones versus Harold Landry. This is a tough one here. I'm going with Dre'Mont Jones.
You know what? I was willing to send Dre'Mont Jones to the championship and anoint him as the king of Quacketology until you made the Duke comparison, and now I don't like him.
I got to tell you this. I got a DM from someone who has an idea for a show, but within the note, they were trying to strategize how we can have this because they're like, if you present it as your idea, it's like he's not going to do it. If you present it as a reader's idea, he's not going to do it. So there has to be like a way that this is presented that make you think that it's like your idea. I get
the thought behind that, but I think you can attest. When you have ideas for shows, I do not shoot those down.
Sometimes, yeah, it depends on it. But no, the best course of strategy is like to bring it up to bring up a conversation organically, and then you're like, we should do a show on this. It's like, yes, it's a great idea. So I have to figure out how to intersperse this into conversation. Dre'Mont Jones to me is I
don't think that's connected to the Duke thing at all, but okay.
I'm saying once you get an idea in your head, it's like so I shouldn't have brought up Duke. But in any event, Dre'Mont Jones, he went to Ohio State. I believe he went to St. Ignatius, same high school as who, by the way, Deniz.
Oh no, I'm not the high school. I don't know anything about high schools.
Darian Connard, but also Jonathan Gannon, if he went to St.
Ignatius. Okay. Well, yes. Yeah. All right. Well,
yeah, actually, I once asked
remove that information from my brain.
I once tried it.
Player, right?
Yeah, did he go there? Let me just confirm, because then I once asked, or I was making small talk with, he went to St. Ignatius. I was making small talk with Jonathan one time, and I brought up the Louisville game the night before, And he's like, yeah, I don't really follow Louisville. I follow St. Ignatius. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't have St. Ignatius' score in the back of my head.
Do you guys think that Darian Connard has gotten enough attention for the fact that he has been in the NFL for 3 years and won the Super Bowl?
If he was on the open market, someone should give him $5 million just in case?
Oh, I mean, imagine if you just decided that was just, I mean, that's the key. You just have to have Darian Connard on the team and you win the Super Bowl.
I mean, no NFL team has ever had him on the roster and not won the Super Bowl.
That's crazy. Now, has any individual player won 4 in a row before? I mean, are we talking about the first time it's ever going to happen?
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, 4.
I mean,
when Charles Haley went from Cowboys to the Niners, I don't know. I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, but it wasn't 4 in a row, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because he would have had to go back to Dallas for it to be 4 in a row, and he didn't do that. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he's looking to do something no one's ever done.
Look, I mean, he's someone.
This should be like the biggest story in the NFL.
Yeah, Lane Johnson was like, this guy's gonna be on the 53. Lane wasn't even beating around the bush. Lane's like, this guy's gonna be on the team this year. Yeah.
All right, Harold Landry or Dre'Mont Jones.
What is your vision for Dre'Mont Jones?
Let's frame it this way. Truly, what do you think is a bigger priority for them? To add an impact edge rusher or a guy who can spell and be potentially an impact player inside? Assuming that's Dre'Mont Jones.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Is that what we think Dre'Mont Jones would be for Fangio? Because that's not what he was last year.
I think he'd be Milton Williams. Yeah, I think he'd be someone who can play different spots along the line.
But Milton Williams didn't really play different spots along the line. He just played on the inside. So I think a handful of snaps where you're lined up in like a 3D tackle.
No, he played different. He played different techniques. Milton played different techniques along the line.
Yeah, right? Sure, but he didn't play as a wide nine.
He didn't play edge. No, that's true.
Right,
that's true.
But Dre'Mont Jones did. That's what he played last year. So I'm just wondering
he was miscast there.
Yeah. Right. So you're thinking bring him here and play him basically on the inside.
So the question is, are they looking more for a Milton Williams replacement or Josh Sweat replacement? And I would submit that they are looking more for a Josh Sweat replacement.
I agree. I'm going to go
because I think Ojulari, I think they like Morrow. I think Jordan Davis, they're going to give Jordan Davis a little bit more of a look this year as well. Thomas Booker is a different type of player, but I know they like Thomas Booker in that building. Whereas edge rusher, they don't like Bryce Huff. So I know that. They like Jalen Hunt.
And we discussed if Jalen Carter doesn't get injured, you don't need that many snaps at defensive tackle. So you're not bringing in guys to fill in those snaps. So I agree that this should go to Landry.
Yeah, I mean they like Nolan Smith, they like Jalen Hunt, they don't like Bryce Huff, so they're more apt to sign an edge rusher.
All right, I'm glad we've eliminated Duke. The championship game.
Yeah,
Khalil Mack against Harold Landry. Now, some people, questioning the legitimacy of this tournament after Harold Landry was originally eliminated in the first round against Michael Mayer. But you know what? Crazier things have happened. And he goes up against Khalil Mack, who was in the first matchup of the entire tournament. Real full circle stuff happening here.
I think we should bring Rasul Douglas into the final as well. Make it a 3-1.
Sure. Congratulations to Rasul Douglas, who has made it a menage.
John Menard Keynes, I believe his name is, had a famous line, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? Right? And so the facts changed here. Harold Landry is now on the open market. He's not a trade candidate. So I think this is very legitimate, right? It's the reality. It's the facts have changed in this situation.
So are you going Harold Landry? Do you think the Eagles would be willing to sign? Let's say he's going to cost Sweat-ish money.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they're the same age, and he has, if not the same level of production, even more.
Yeah, I mean, but I got to think too that no one traded for him, right? It might be similar to Sweat last year. He was available via trade. No one traded for him. So the league's already had a chance to jump the market and get him. Jonah Jackson was a guy who teams wanted to keep off the open market, right?
One team, as you correctly pointed out, with the same exercise about Baron Browning.
Yeah. But Harold Landry has been available here. Look, if the price is low, I guess who's the price better for? I was leaning toward Landry because of age, but I guess I'd be happy to go Mack here. I mean, and with Mack, there is the background.
Landry's going to cost more money, but he's not going to count against the comp pick formula. That's basically the decision. You probably just decide who you think is a better player, who's a better fit. But
I mean, I've seen Mack and Fangio's defense, so I think if they say to Vic, you can have your guy for this year. Who are you going with? My guess is Vic would lean toward Khalil Mack. I think Vic Fangio really likes Khalil Mack. What do you guys think?
Yeah, if Landry is going to be expensive, then definitely Mack. I mean, I don't think. But yeah, I don't know.
What do you think, Bo?
I'm just not sure Landry is going to be expensive.
I'm a little bit worried about the historical precedent of letting Harold Landry win after he was eliminated in the first round.
Okay.
Just as a Quacketology purist, but
can you give us some Quacketology history, Bo? This is one of the few games that I don't actually.
Sure.
It's too
I
complicated.
can tell you, I remember that the Senior Bowl Quacketology once with Fran Duffy. I remember that Garrett Bradbury in the 4th round won, and then he ended up being a first-round pick. So that one didn't pan out. I believe Jordan Whitehead is a past champion.
That sounds
Quacketology.
Right. Yeah.
I believe who was the Colts linebacker who then signed with the Browns the year that Sirianni came over, and so they signed Eric Wilson instead. It was
Anthony Walker.
Anthony Walker, I believe, might have won Quacketology in the past. So it's a really storied group that Khalil Mack or Harold Landry is hoping to join.
So here's just a little Mutual Admiration Society quotes for you here. This is Vic Fangio on Khalil Mack. When he came out of college, we were drafting very late in the first round in San Francisco at the time. So they said, don't even bother watching him. So I didn't watch him as a collegiate player. With him in Oakland and me in the NFC, I didn't really see him play a lot. Then when we got him, and it was just after a few days, it was like, holy crap. Okay? That's how that was his first impression of him. Khalil Mack, talking about Vic Fangio, said, Coach Vic, he was a mastermind. With him understanding the players he had, making sure before the week we were prepared for every guy, what we would do. We expected to dominate every time we played.
All right. Joel Corey, the former NFL agent, has contract projections that he just put out. And he has Khalil Mack in here. The projection for Khalil Mack is 2 years, $45 million with 23.5 fully guaranteed at signing.
Okay.
Which is more than with Josh Sweat. It's more guaranteed, but it's a lower. I guess it's about the same. With Josh Sweat, it's $495 with 52.5 fully guaranteed at signing. That's a lot for Khalil Mack. I don't think the Eagles can afford that for Khalil Mack. Now, I don't know where Harold Landry is coming in, but
I mean, that is a lot.
I think we just got to give it to Rasul Douglas at this point.
I think it might be Jack Sanborn again.
I'm looking at this Dan Pompei piece. Why Khalil Mack allows Vic Fangio to accomplish more by just doing less. And this whole thing, Fangio's just talking about how Khalil Mack just makes the engine run in Chicago. Now, this was 5 years ago, but I mean, look, if you're looking at those two guys, I think I would lean toward Khalil Mack because of the Fangio connection.
I'm gonna, and if you think about who's got the juice in the building right now, like does Vic have a little bit of juice to put his thumb on the scale? This is the guy I want. I could be talked into that.
I also think the Eagles will still get a comp pick for Milton Williams. They'll still get a comp pick for Mekhi Becton.
I think if he's getting that much, you're not getting that Milton Williams comp pick. You're looking at a 4th.
Well, he's canceling out Sweat, is my guess, right?
Well, one of the two. I guess if Sweat gets that much, then all of a sudden you are.
But it's still costing you all that money and the opportunity cost of one of the picks, right? So I don't really see that.
All right, Khalil Mack.
Yes.
Zach has convinced us.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I would love to cover Khalil Mack. I will say that. I had the great fortune of being able to cover Julio Jones, and I think whenever you get the chance, like, no, seriously, but to be around
I can see the billboard now. Khalil Mack is coming.
to have a chance to be around Hall of Fame players as someone who loves football as much as I do is like a personal treat.
Good point here in the chat. A couple of people have pointed it out, and you know what? If it's a tiebreaker, so be it. Khalil Mack, Khalil Quack, Quacketology.
Okay.
I think it was destined.
Okay. I see people in the chat saying Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson, you have to trade for. I don't think the Eagles are trading for Trey Hendrickson.
All right, Professor, any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, I think the record's already stated that I'm predicting Rasul Douglas will be here. So, not knowing anything about like whether the Bills are going to sign him, but
all right, and a final reminder: we will be live on Monday at noon when the new league year, the tampering period opens up. Rather, we're going to be live from 12 to 3 with me, Zach, and Fran Duffy in studio. And if there's reason to keep it going beyond 3, we will keep it going beyond 3. So,
I should say in advance, because some people have asked me this. I normally make my free agency tracker and post it. I have not done that this year, and the reason is because I will be completely off the grid all of next week. So posting that and then not being able to update it, I thought would be silly. So we're going to Belize tomorrow morning, and we're going to be like on an island with possibly no internet during free agency. So it's normally Penn spring break is the week before free agency. So I don't know if Penn changes it or the NFL changes it or what, but we're off by a week here in a way that is going to make this hard for me to follow free agency for the first week. So I'm glad we won the Super Bowl, and I don't have to worry quite as much about it as usual. But yeah, we're excited about it.
Zach, you are also going to be on vacation next week.
I'm going to be on vacation next week?
Yeah,
what's the joke?
It's a joke for that precise reaction, as if there would ever be a possibility when you would take that week off.
No. Oh, yeah. No, I'm on vacation 3 weeks from now. It's a family thing. But I will not be on vacation.
To apologize for it.
Yeah, he wants to be clear that he would never choose to go on vacation in the 3rd week of free agency if it were up to him.
If
his family is forcing him. Yeah.
That is true. I hold my vacation until June when nothing goes on, but some things are more important.
Yes.
But no, I will. Yeah, but I will be. I can't wait for next week. Next week's some of our best shows are the live free agents shows. So excited for that.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Congratulations to Khalil Mack on bringing home the title of Quacketology Champion 2025. For Deniz and Zach and Julia, we thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you on Monday for the extravaganza. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.